So this all began with Trump's ambassador to Hollywood, one of them, John Voight, meeting last weekend with Trump in Mar-a-Lago. They came up with a proposal, his group, of really based on tax incentives. These are the tax credits that studios get for making movies in various states and countries. And there was a small component of that was about tariffs. The president grabbed the tariff concept and then put that out on social media. I think the studios would love to see more of a tax incentive thing than a tariff related thing, because the tariff would impact their ability to still operate overseas and would cost them money.
All right, so they'd rather see, I guess, subsidies than tariffs or tax incentives, as you say. It's interesting. I don't understand really exactly how this would work. And Andrew Silverman, maybe you have given it a little bit of thought from your vantage point, because there are a lot of films that are, there's scenes done in Eastern Europe or scenes filmed in China, for example, because of what a big market it's been. And then they still make the film, edit it, color it, put it together in Hollywood. How does this work in a tariff situation?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, there are a lot of things that we don't know about this tariff. We don't know if it only applies to U.S. film studios making movies outside the United States. We don't know if it applies to foreign film studios making movies out of the United States. We don't know if foreign film companies coming into the U.S. making movies here would have the tariff applied to them. But the tariff is really interesting. It's actually quite like a tax. Well, I'm a tax lawyer, so to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Yeah. Exactly right. But it's a lot like either an excise tax or a border adjustment tax, right? With regard to an excise tax in this case would be sort of a sin tax, right? A tax on alcohol, a tax on cigarettes. It's a federal sales tax. So in that sense, this is quite like that. It's trying to get American studios, American film studios, and American theater goers to not see movies made outside the United States, to change their behavior. And a border adjustment tax is a tax that only applies to imports, not to exports. Same situation here, right? If you're bringing movies, presumably, if you're bringing movie making into the United States, tariff doesn't apply. If you're exporting your movie making outside the United States, tariff applies.
And it seems as though there's been some positive reception, at least from Hollywood, what I'm hearing anecdotally about the idea of bringing more dollars and more things being made here in the U.S. as it pertains to films. But I mean, of course, to your earlier point, Matt.
I've heard people in L.A. as well that said they're pretty happy about this.
Right. So, Chris, what are you hearing?
Well, I think you have to differentiate. There are people that want the sort of carrot portion of this whole package, the tax incentives, as opposed to the stick portion, which is getting hit with the tariff. If you maybe own studio space and are in the business of actually making movies, if you're an actor or screenwriter and you just want to see, more work brought back to the U.S., then maybe you could make an argument for this whole movement. But I wouldn't say there's a broad embrace of the idea of tariffs. In fact, a couple of days after this first came out, you saw California Governor Gavin Newsom suggest sort of his own plan, which was $7.5 billion of federal tax credits, which was actually more in line with what the John Voight group was proposing. Tax incentives, federal tax credits to make movies in the U.S.
Well, I mean, Chris, as a follow-up to that, so I cover real estate stocks, and one of the stocks that I cover is Hudson Pacific Properties, and they are actually an owner of a lot of these Hollywood studios. And Wedbush analysts are actually saying that tariffs, this whole situation, could potentially be a possible positive for the company. When we think about these Hollywood studios, can it be a perk at all for them in terms of bringing in more dollars to them specifically at all?
The tariff portion, it's a little tricky for the studios. They're going overseas because it's cheaper for them to do so, okay? So if they're forced by tariffs to come back here, it's not necessarily a win for them. It's a win for U.S. jobs, which is definitely something President Trump wants to do. And so you could see why some workers would be happy about that. Calculating a tariff on a foreign film, I mean, if you depends on how you define it. I mean, basically, all the Star Wars films were shot in the UK or Tunisia. They were all foreign films. It's a very complicated process. The Voight Group did suggest some way of doing so, only putting a tariff on the parts that are shot overseas, and then really only slapping the tariff on in the case of what they called a bad actor who could have made the movie domestically but deliberately went overseas. It's a complicated thing.